Hey guys, welcome back. We are here to talk about all the books that I read in April, and trust me when I say you will need a glass of water, a snack maybe, and get comfy and cozy. I have a lot to go through. You're gonna think I'm full of shit when I tell you I have in fact read 27 books, 27 pieces of literature. That's probably better acknowledgement because not all of them is a graphic novel. I consider that a book read, but it's not like a book in traditional terms, I would say. Anyways, I did go ahead and try to break it down into different categories, and some of these books I won't have a whole lot to say about them, and then some of them I have a lot to say. The reason I read so many books is because I got very behind on my reading goals in order to read 200 books for the year. So I started checking out a bunch of graphic novels and short stories to help me reach those goals and play catch up. And good news, I am at this point 3 books ahead of schedule. But on average, if I want to read 200 books a year, I have to read like 15 books a month. So yeah, it's gonna be a push. It is. I texted my sister and I was like, I have read this many books. This is so hard. How do you do it? And she's like, well, I'm actually really behind. I've only read like 35. I was like, ah! So I'm gonna way surpass her. It's okay because I feel like she might end up catching up to me. Probably. I don't know. We'll see. All right. So anyways, we're gonna go ahead and talk about the graphic novels and the mangas first, and then the short stories, the series, which I really don't have anything to say on that one, and then everything else. I read 3 mangas. The first one was Spy Family. This one is so cute, and my friend has been trying to tell me to watch Spy Family, the anime. I think it's on Netflix. I think she said it was on Netflix, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but I picked up the manga and I fell in love with it. I could not believe how quirky and silly and funny it is. I was laughing out loud. I even got my younger son to pick it up and read it. I literally went back the next day to the library to see if I could check out the next in the series. It must have been the only one. I almost wonder if it isn't one that they have from a different library. So at some point, I need to go on the computer and request some of these other books. The other one I read was The Ancient Magus Bride, and this one is so weird and dark and spooky, and I really, really liked it. So there is this girl, so I thought that she was forcibly being put up for auction to sell herself as a slave, but I guess according to someone else who actually recently just brought this up in a video I was watching, was saying that she actually did it to herself. So she has a special gift that I don't even think she realizes she has, and she can attract certain beings. So this guy waltzes into the auction, and he proposes that he will purchase her for 5 million. Is it 5 million? I don't know. A very high price. Nobody matches it, so he wins the auction and he takes her. We're all under the impression that she's supposed to be a slave, but he ends up deciding that he's going to take her on to train to be a mage. And this was so beyond her expectations at all. And while she technically is owned by him, she is going to be learning this valuable skill and trade. So I don't know what exactly what that means. Oh, and also he wants to marry her. And within this, they do explain that she's not just some commoner, that she's got this special gift that he was able to detect. So anyways, it was really cute. I really liked it, and I can't wait to check out the next ones. The next one I read was Sorcerers and Secretaries. And this one is actually, you know how mangas read from the reverse? That's the Japanese way to read mangas. This one opened like a regular traditional novel, so I don't know if this was not actually originally a Japanese story, but it doesn't really matter. This one was really cute. It's not like a lot of other mangas that I have read. This is more kind of like a contemporary romance. It follows this girl who daydreams a lot, and she has this journal that she writes in a lot, and her mother wants her to get this business degree, and she also works as a secretary. She's just very bored with it all. It's not really what she wants to do, but it will make her mother proud, so she ends up doing a lot of daydreaming, and she passes up on a lot of opportunities to socialize and stuff like that, or to go on dates or whatever, because she just wants to live in her daydream world. There is a boy that has his eye on her, and she just has been so oblivious or in her own little world that she's never noticed him before. And so this kind of, her friends and her mom are kind of putting pressure on her, get out in the world a little bit. So, and she's been just like nothing but annoyed by this kid who keeps following her around. And it's so cute because she finally, like, I forget, something happens and she finally agrees to like hang out with him. And he tries so hard to get her attention, and she's very put off by it, and I think that is really cute. And then one of her characters in her notebook is this like wizard, and she's like sitting at lunch or something at this table, and he comes to talk to her, and she goes to close up her book, and his little wizard head like pops out, you know, obviously no one can see it but her. I don't know, I love the illustrations of this too, and it's just so, it's such a great like little story. I love it. I have 3 new favorites to add to my list and 3 new series of mangas that I want to read. That's one really challenging thing about checking out mangas and getting into a manga series as well, is because sometimes the library just doesn't have them. They should have them all. I don't know. I probably just need to be more aggressive about asking for them, putting them on hold. The next category is comics. I read 4 comic books or graphic novels. The first one I read was When I Arrived at the Castle by Emily Carroll. This, honestly, it was the size of this one, it was incredibly small. I was like, wow, I could read this, and it didn't have a whole lot of text in it. And then the second thing was that it's called I Arrived at the Castle, just like, and I found it particularly intriguing because it's very close to the titles I Capture the Castle and We've Always Lived in the Castle. We've Always Lived in the Castle is one of my favorites. That's what I thought I was getting. That is not what this is at all. It is not related to it at all. It's more like Dracula. The blurb on the back actually compares it to Dracula meets Alice in Wonderland. So it's definitely a horror. It's very gory, and I basically enjoyed it. So it's a girl that like gets lured to the castle, and then when she arrives, there's this beautiful woman who also, there's a scene where she's like looking at her through this peephole, and she could see that she's this beautiful woman, but then the woman notices her looking at her, and so she turns around and she like goes all feral. And then I guess it's also kind of queer, but there's like nudity and stuff too. So anyways, it was okay. It was pretty decent. The next one I read was The Fall of the House of Usher. This is like a graphic novel of a classic novel by, Edgar Allan Poe. And I didn't really know what this story was about, The Fall of the House of Usher. I have been reading the T. Kingfisher book. What is it called? Something about feasts. There's like a rabbit and stuff like that. Apparently, the T. Kingfisher book is supposed to be like a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher. So since I've been having a hard time getting into that book, I thought, well, this is a really good opportunity to kind of get the gist of the original book of like kind of what T. Kingfisher's trying to do with it. I don't know if that actually helped me at all, but hey, I read that book now. The next one I read was Snow, Glass, Apples by Neil Gaiman, and this is supposed to be like a Snow White retelling. It is weird. So in the traditional Snow White, Snow is a sweet and innocent girl, and she gets a mother-in-law that's evil, the evil queen, right? Well, Neil Gaiman completely flips the traditional roles of Snow White, and Snow is like evil. And I thought that was such a fun way to rewrite this story. I really enjoyed it. What I enjoyed the most about this story was the artwork, to be honest. Like, above everything, the artwork was absolutely gorgeous. And there is this quality to, I guess it's called Art Deco. There's this one scene, I don't have these with me because I already returned them to the library, but there's this one scene where they show like trees in the background, and the way they're kind of blended together, and there's like a black outline with like almost like watercolor, they kind of blend into one kind of thing. I don't know how to explain it. Or the way it's drawn out, it reminds me of this childhood book of mine, just in the illustrations. Anyways, whatever. That one was really, really good. The next one I read was Persepolis Volume 2, and I guess there's 4 books in the series now, which is really exciting. I read Persepolis 1 so long ago, and I feel like it was one of those books that really kind of changed my life in a sense, because it's a memoir. It was probably one of the first memoirs I read. It's about Marjane Satrapi, the author, how she was born in Iran. She's born in Iran? I'm sorry, I forgot where it takes place. Anyways, the first one takes place over the start of a war. It's like an independence war of independence, not the war of independence, you know what I mean? But like, this was like, before this war, people were pretty much left alone. You were allowed to live a normal life. The women did not have to wear head covers if they didn't want. They had all the rights of everyone, most other women around the world. Children went to school, girls went to school, and then as things changed, it changed life for them. In Persepolis number 2, her parents have actually sent her to live in Austria with a family member, and then it just follows her adapting to being separated from her family, being an immigrant, trying to navigate life, trying to make friends, all the different changes and stuff like that, and it's so good. All right, moving on to the next category of series. For this, I read 3 books, and that would be the Throne of Glass series. So I read Throne of Glass. Oh my goodness. Hold on, let me check in with this. What happened? Whoops. Okay, so it is that time of year when it rains, it gets really muggy. And I'm just not ready to turn on the AC yet, okay? And have to deal with that electricity bill. And this is really just one series, but all the books that I read in that series, and that is Throne of Glass. I'm very excited to be jumping into this series. This is a series I'm binge reading in a way, but I'm also reading some other things with these because I want to read the physical books of these because I am annotating them, and I kind of have like this IRL book club with some other ladies, and we're reading all the Sarah J Maas books. So that's been really, really fun. So I've got Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Assassin's Blade. There are 5 short stories within this book. I have, for the purposes of my reading challenge, I have been separating each of the stories as if they are an individual book. I don't care, sue me, whatever. But I read the first 2 in here, so I still have 3 more to read. And I don't have anything to say about those because, as I said, it's a series. Overall, I am loving them. I'm really, really enjoying. The next category is where it's gonna get long. Short stories. I have read 12 short stories. The first one is Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. The version I read was not the over 500 page unabridged version. I read this one, The Masters of Literature, The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. It is incredibly short. It's like 95 pages. I had it on my shelf and I was like, okay, let's read this. I didn't realize that this is like a 1% of the entire novel, but I'm gonna be honest, if this is the most condensed version of that story, there's a lot of wasted pages in that book because, so it's a mystery. So apparently there's this moonstone that is cursed. Somebody steals it from the Indians, and whoever like comes across this or holds it in their possession is cursed, and people just drop dead. And it's also this mystery of this investigator trying to figure out what has happened, where is this missing moonstone, and why are people dying. This book is really just the testimony of all the different characters and their side of the story. So in a way, I do like how it just gets to the point of each character and just like what their experience was, but it is also kind of wordy with the he said, she said. And then I think when I first started it too, I didn't realize that it was going to do this back and forth of just like who's talking. It took me a minute to like go back and be like, oh yeah, obviously their stories are going to seem a little repetitive because they might be overlapping in some ways, but they're also like, because you're changing the perspective of like this crime. I don't know. It is what it is. I'm glad that I read it. I will not be reading the full edition because like I just don't think it's my cup of tea. The next one is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This is one that I have actually debated this book with my husband so much over the years. Like he's like, oh my god, that's such an amazing book. And I'm like, yeah, I read it. I must have read it probably because of school. I was probably forced to read it. And I remember hating this book. And I try to think back as to why I hated it so much. And the only thing I got out of it was the mice. And the fact that one of the characters kept carrying a mouse in his pocket and would kill them. And I forgot all the other details, like everything else I forgot. So now rereading it as an adult with my wisdom of history, with my wisdom of how times have changed and people and working class and all those kinds of things. Oh, and mental health. I see this book in a completely different way, and I love this book. This book went from being one of the worst to now one of the best. I am a Steinbeck stan now, and I have been collecting more and more books by him, because if they're anything like this book, this was amazing. So we follow these two men, Lenny, what is his friend's name? Lenny and George. We follow Lenny and George. Lenny is this big guy, very, very strong as an ox, good worker, but I think he's got some like autism or something. They don't have a name for it in this book, but he definitely struggles in like a social thing. He does these things where he's very repetitive. He doesn't hold on to instructions very long because his memory is like slow. So things like that. And there's George, and George is like kind of a small guy. And they have been traveling between job site to different farms looking for work. When we first meet them, they're on the road to this new job. And apparently the reason they left the old job is because something happened. Lenny fucked up. Lenny messed up. George is always looking out for him, covering up for his messes, because he knows that Lenny can't help it, and Lenny needs somebody to look after him, especially in this day and age. Like, I don't know, they'd probably just lynch him or something, which is incredibly sad. So George is always picking up slack, but George is sacrificing so much of his own life and self for Lenny, and it becomes just such an incredibly sweet story. And throughout this story, like, the ending, oh god, the ending, ugh, it hurts, but then like you also kind of understand too, this world is just too harsh of a world for a guy like Lenny. I don't want to ruin the ending, but like, The next one I read is Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw. This is a horror. It's a very short story, and why am I struggling to remember how to explain this book? Oh lord. Okay, so you're following this group of thrill-seeking friends, and there is a couple that is getting married. So they end up having their wedding at this incredibly spooky haunted venue because they think it would be cool. Well, it just so happens that it's not just a myth, and this evil person, this evil lady who's been sacrificing women. No. So wait, what is it? This ghost? People have sacrificed women to this ghost or monster or something to keep her company, so I guess she wouldn't. So while they're there for wedding plans and stuff like that, things start going south, and it turns into this very scary, spooky, haunted house story. But the thing that was interesting about this for me also was that it's actually based on a Japanese folklore. It also satisfied one of the challenges for my reading challenge, so that's really cool because I did not know that this was based on Japanese folklore. So it was decently good. I don't have really strong feelings on this one way or the other. It is what it is. The next one I'm going to talk about is a favorite now. I'm going to turn around and reread it, and I can't wait until my hold comes through on the second book in the series. But that is called A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This one I picked up because it was really, really short. I didn't really know a whole lot about it, and a lot of people have been talking about it on YouTube. So I picked it up. It took me a couple times. I couldn't get into this book at first, and I think it's because I was maybe distracted or something. At the end of the day, when I finally sunk into the story, I was like, oh my god, I need to reread this now because it is so incredibly sweet and cute and cozy and actually very like cerebral or whatever. So A Psalm for the Wild Built is about this tea monk. So it's this kid who's, living at home and everything, and he decides that what he really wants to do is become a tea monk, and it is a skill he doesn't really have any knowledge about, but he's determined, so he sets out. And it's kind of funny because he gets his first client and he's like, oh crap, I don't know what to do. So he kind of like fakes it until he makes it, and she's like, hold on, how long have you been doing this? And he's like, well, you're my first. And I thought it was just kind of a funny little detail. But what a tea monk does is they go around to help people, like people who are really sad or down and out, and they sit there and talk with them, and they make them a specialized tea for their very unique ailments, and it helps them feel better. In this world also, there was a time where there were robots, and at some point in history, these robots got got sentient, and they didn't want to work for humans anymore, and so they left, and they basically just disappeared, and no one's seen a robot for ages, until one day, our tea monk runs into a robot, and they start trekking off on this adventure together. And while on this adventure, they start having all these conversations about what it is to be a human. And I also feel that there's an aspect of, they talked about so many different things like nature, and analyzing what it is to be a human kind of oversimplifies all the little different topics and conversations that they have surrounding that. And like a lot of the comparisons that they make between like what our T-Monk is kind of grappling with and kind of struggling with trying to figure out about his own life, and how he feels like he really needs to do something with his life, something important. And the robot is like, why? You just exist like everything else on the planet. There's nothing wrong with that. You just exist to live. And it's kind of interesting though, you know, like if you think about it, I feel like a lot of us humans, there's some point where we're like, what am I doing with my life? I should have done more, like as a whole, or I need to be important. Like, why do we feel that way? Kind of. I don't know. I think that I really needed to read this book. The next book I read was Stone Words by Pam Conrad. This is a book that I read. It was an all-time favorite of mine when I was a child. I was like, I remember being in like third or fourth grade when I picked this book up in my school library, and I didn't even really learn to read until like second, third grade. I have dyslexia. My mom says I actually have I was tested and I got tested for like a learning disorder or something like that. But I don't know about all that. I do know that I struggle with like my lefts and my rights. I get really confused if like, okay, I figured everything out on the right side. If you flip it and tell me to do it on the left side, I'm like, what? I lose it all. It all falls out of my brain. I can't figure it out, and I have to like put so much effort into it, or have to see it done, or have to have like dyslexia for sure. So anyways, reading was really hard for me, so they're the few books that really grabbed my attention when I was younger, and they will stick with me forever, and this is one of them. Stone Words is about a girl named Zoe, and she gets dropped off at her grandparents' house by her mom, and she's just set to live there. And while she's there, she's like 4 years old when this first starts. She finds a little make-believe friend named Zoe Louise. And she just thought it was cool because they have the same name. And when she's 4, she's like telling her grandma, Zoe Louise this and Zoe Louise that. And Zoe Louise was trying to like lure her out into the woods and stuff like that. But for the most part, they become like the best of friends. And as time passes, she starts to realize no one else can see Zoe Louise, only she can. And then she realizes that's because Zoe Louise is a ghost. She's dead. She died years ago. And when she starts to get even older, and she realizes that Zoe Louise is not aging because she hasn't changed at all, and now Zoe is taller than Zoe Louise, things start to change for Zoe Louise, and like she's looking grungier, she's looking more dead essentially. She's also becoming a little bit more cruel and trying to lure her out to the woods. An interesting thing about Zoe's mom is that Zoe's mom, I guess, talks about ghosts and spirits and stuff like that a lot, and it makes me wonder, they don't ever really talk about her mom very much, but you have to wonder what's going on with her mom, because why did she just drop her off at her grandma's house too? Like, where did she go? Where has she been doing all these years? She does come at one point to visit Zoe, but they don't have a very close relationship at all. She just kind of ignores her daughter. But it does make me wonder if maybe her mother also made friends with Zoe Louise when she was little. The ending is really weird though. So she did find a way to go through the staircase and cross over into like the spirit world where Zoe Louise's reality is, and in that reality, like she's kind of getting to see the history of Zoe Louise's family and like maybe what happened to her. And so she tries to save her from ever dying in the first place. And it's just kind of weird. It's kind of cool. You know, what's interesting is I see now why either I love this book so much, or the things that I like in my real life, or things that I like in my life kind of cross over with this book, because Zoe's mom would take Zoe just to go walk around the graveyard, like for funsies. And it's kind of funny because like if it's a beautiful graveyard, I'll go walk around. Now I don't sit there and like read all the gravestones, but sometimes I stop by at interesting looking tombstones. And like we have this one close to my house that's all the way from like there are tombstones in there from like the 1800s, and those I like the old cemeteries, you know, the ones that have been there for forever and ever. Anyways, that was a really great experience to kind of relive a childhood favorite. The next one I read was The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante. And okay, so The Lost Daughter, oh my god, I ended up like hating the character. And I guess obviously that is the purpose, but it's this woman who goes on like vacation and she's there with this family who have a daughter, and she's just like, her voice is just so annoying. She's just like, ew. She does kind of start talking about her own daughter, but then you grow to realize that she just abandoned her own children. And then she does this really cruel thing to this couple's daughter by taking her like little stuffed animal. And at first you're like, oh, is it because she misses her daughter and it reminds her of her? And she's like looking at this toy and she's like, kind of like, why did I do that? How am I going to give it back? How am I going to like explain this to this lady? Because this lady's really nice. And you're kind of like, hey, we all do stupid stuff sometimes, whatever. But then it grows into something completely different. You're just like, ew, this woman is horrible. I have like no sympathy for her. And I don't know. It was kind of a weird book. It was a good time though. I did enjoy it. The next one I read was Foster by Claire Keegan. Oh, this one was really good too. So it's about this girl. She's a foster. Okay, so her mom drops her off at this house, and she obviously doesn't really know what it's like to have someone be so kind to her and stuff like that. So the time that she's there, these people are just really, really nice to her, and she grows to just love them until her mom comes to pick her up. And I guess it's hard because it's like, obviously you want that relationship with your family, but like obviously these people, like she finally had the first taste of what it's like for someone to care about her, and the end was just like, oh, it's so like heart-wrenching. I'm like, I don't want them to be separated. Also, again, when it comes to kids, like I get so upset when it comes to like kids' hearts being broken, especially when it comes from a family member. All right, the next one I read was If You're Not Yet Like Me. This was different. So this follows this woman who, I guess she was like really annoying to read from, and she goes and on this date. All right, so this book actually contains two stories. The first being a couple whose love story didn't turn out as they expected, and the second is about a happy couple. Okay, I did not like the second story, I'm the Lion. I did enjoy the first story. You follow a woman who is playing games, catching a man that she's not even attracted to. Oh, that's right. Okay. She's not even attracted to this man, but she enjoys the power of ensnaring him. She's supposedly very insecure about herself, and I could definitely see that. I really did not like her at first because I couldn't stand that she would just sit there and play games and like continue on with this game as she's dating this person, being intimate with this person that she doesn't even find attractive, that she doesn't like. And it's kind of like her, oh, I'm so perfect, and this person's like, ew, and I could do so much better. And it's like, then go do better then, because I'm tired of hearing about it. And that's how I was feeling about her. I was like, ew, I hate this woman so much, but I couldn't stop reading. And the other part I put in here, I said, I didn't like her at first, but the beauty of her story is that you could see relatable things about her also, which makes a girl think. So that's what I put in my review. I don't know exactly what I mean by relatable, because like I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't act like that, but I think maybe the thought process sometimes, it doesn't mean that sometimes I'm not insecure. It doesn't mean that sometimes I'm like a little bit critical of things. But anyways, what's interesting is how it all ended up playing out, because she ended up, I guess, really falling for him. Okay, the next one is Recitative by Tori Morrison. This is the first Tori Morrison book that I've read. I actually now have 3 books on my shelves by this author, but this one was incredibly short, and this is actually said to be more of an experimental book, and she was trying to take away any descriptions that would identify one girl over the other as far as their skin color. So we actually have a black girl and a white girl, and they kind of meet up through different parts in their life. Like I think they're friends, and then they have some distance, and then they meet up later, and then they don't see each other for a while, and then they meet up again, and that's kind of how the story plays out. But it's basically like, you as the reader, you're wanting to identify them, but there's no identifying qualities. So I don't know if it's like, can you pick out which one is the white girl, which one's the black girl, or if it's supposed to be also showing that it doesn't really matter. And I hope that's what we're going with, because it doesn't really matter. So anyways, that was that. It was interesting. The next one I read was 7 Empty Houses. I actually have a review on this one. Hold on. 7, because this one was set out, it was trying to do something, but I don't think that it worked. The 7 houses in these 7 stories are empty. Some are devoid of love or life or furniture, of people or the truth of memories. But in her tense visionary tales, something always creeps back in: a ghost, a fight, trespassers, a list of things to do before you die, a child's first encounter with a dark choice, or fallibility of parents. Okay, so that's essentially what this book was supposed to be about. My response to this book, did I write a response? Ew, maybe I didn't write a response. Let me see. I did not write a response. Anyways, for the most part, I found this book to be really boring. And I feel like I was really intrigued by that concept, but I don't think that it worked. It didn't deliver because I sure as heck didn't pick up on it. That's all I have to say about that. The next one is The Woman from Uruguay by Pedro Mayal. And this is a guy who gets married to this woman. Everything is good. Everything is great. They have a wonderful marriage. Then something happens where I think they're from Mexico. Yeah, they're from Mexico. The value of a currency starts to be devalued. It's worth less and less. And so they find themselves just struggling more and more just to do basic things, buy groceries, pay their rent. And he starts having problems keeping a job. I guess he goes through a period where he's not working at all. And so he's been asking his wife for money and she's been working. And then he starts to notice, I guess he's older than her too. And then they have a child together. And I think it's kind of weird how he talks about his kid. He's just like, well, this happened. Yeah, I love him more than anything. But then like he's kind of just detached from his son and his wife, it seems like. And then he starts noticing that his wife is staying later and later after work, and he suspects that she has been unfaithful, but he doesn't like get jealous or upset. He's just like, okay, well, I'm gonna go and do my own thing. So anyways, he starts crossing the border into Uruguay because he is going to try to pay his wife back. He starts trying to figure out what was wrong with him, and a lot of it is he has been relying on her financially. He has not been the supporter that he should have been. So he's like, you know what? I don't blame her. I'm going to go work. I'm going to figure out how to earn this money back and pay her back. So he takes his pesos and he goes to Uruguay and trades, does something with and he's found a loophole or something in the trading his money or whatever, so that he's making money off of it. Or they explained it differently, but I don't understand how it works. Either way, he found a way to make up this money. But while he's in Uruguay on these trips to do whatever it is he's doing, he sees this woman. So the woman from Uruguay, and they almost like hook up, but they get interrupted, and so he leaves and he doesn't see her for a long time, but he ends up fantasizing about her for a really long time. On another trip, he runs into her, and I guess she has like a boyfriend and a dog. I don't think she was anticipating seeing him. And so they just chat and things like that. Nothing happens. But I guess they plan to meet up on another occasion, and then something happens. And you're just like... I don't know whether to feel bad for him, but I ended up really enjoying this book. I definitely didn't like a lot of the like vulgar kind of over-sexualized talk. You are like, reading this from the perspective of a guy, so it is what it is. I did really enjoy where the story happened. So the next book I read was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first in the Murderbot Diaries, and this one sounded so good to me based off of Pursuit Project. Really hypes this book up a lot, and I was like, oh my god, that sounds so cute. And I had a really hard time with this. I didn't get it. I felt more confused than anything going through the story. But you know what? I'm going to be giving this book another shot, but I'm not going to be listening to it on audiobook. I think that does happen to me a lot of times because I was going to completely give up on this series until I read A Psalm for the Wild Built, because you're dealing with like sentient robots. So I want to go back to All Systems Red and give it another shot. And so I'm going to be getting the ebook version so that I could really sit down with it, because it could just be the narrator, it could just be the time I was trying to listen to it. I am eager to give that one another chance. And they're also, to their credit, these are also very short books as well. So as you know, I'm trying to read a lot of short books, so I really appreciate these short ones. Okay, on to the next category. We have all the other books that I read. The first one being The Boy in Striped Pajamas. This book was phenomenal. It follows this family who live in, where the heck do they live? I apologize. I forget where they start their journey. They live in this really nice house. They have like a maid and some other people to help them around their house. Their father works for the German military. I don't know what his position is, but he's definitely higher up, and the Führer sends him off to another city, him and his family. They say, we need you down here. So the first huge portion of this book is our main character, the little boy who is very, very upset about moving. He does not want to move, and he's really throwing a temper tantrum. He's throwing a fit about it, and he's going to miss his friends, but unfortunately there's nothing he can do. They have to go. So when they get there, he hates everything about it, and he's like, there are no kids here. I miss my friends. And he starts looking out his window, and he sees beyond the fence there are a bunch of kids over there in striped pajamas. And he keeps trying to ask questions about who they are, and no one can tell him anything. So one day while he's out, he decides to go up to the fence, and he meets a boy on the other side of the fence, and they start talking. So they meet almost daily to talk and share stories, and they become really good friends. And then something tragic happens, and I cannot tell you, but this had me shook. I could not believe this book. I could not. I remember when this book came out, my mom read it, and then they all, like my mom, my grandma, like everyone around me, I felt like read this book when it came out. And then they went to go see the movie, and they would not stop talking about it. They were just in love with this book. I get it now. I totally get it. I can't believe this. This is just, you have to experience that one. The next one I read was City of Ghosts. I think we are having a new kind of ghost story trend going on. This is kind of a lot like Stonewards. We are following Cass. We're following Cass, and Cass almost drowned. And ever since she almost drowned and yet survived, she's been able to see ghosts. However, there is one ghost friend that follows her around and is quite good friends with her. Oddly enough, ironically enough, consequently enough, her parents are also these ghost hunters, but they've never seen a real ghost. And she doesn't think that even if she tried to tell them that they would believe her. And they have all these, they're like Ghostbusters, right? So they actually go on a special trip to either Scotland or Ireland. I am so sorry. I can't remember. I want to say it's Ireland. I don't know. Wait. Edinburgh. Oh yeah, it was Scotland. Okay, so I read another book that takes place in Ireland, so I got them twisted. Anyways, so they go to Edinburgh because it's like one of the most haunted cities. Like they've got their work cut out for them on the ghost hunting track, and they're staying at this house with these really quirky characters, and then they meet this young girl who knows that Cass can see ghosts, and so this other girl can also see ghosts. She's like, you have a ghost following you, and she's like, oh yeah, I know. And she's like, well, what do you mean you know? Aren't you gonna do something about it? She's like, what are you talking about? So this other girl's figured out that it's her duty, because she can see ghosts, she's supposed to send them on. So she goes and touches ghosts and makes them disappear. So this whole time, Cass's ghost friend is so concerned that this girl's gonna just make him disappear. And on the other side, there is another scary ghost person in red who is going to try to lure her to the other side and capture her, which then she would really die or something like that. I don't know. There's this whole lore behind this whole thing. But anyways, this book ended up being incredibly good. I really, really enjoyed it. Oh, I forgot to put this one on here. Pumpkin. Whoopsies. The next book I read was Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by Shay Earnshaw. And this book was really, really fun. This tells the story of Sally after she gets married to Jack Skellington, and what it's going to be like ruling over Halloween Town with Jack. She was really in love with Jack. She wanted to be with Jack, but she didn't really think about all the other things that come along with being the ruler of Halloween Town. So suddenly everyone wants pictures with her. They want interviews with her. They want to give her all these responsibilities, and she feels very overwhelmed, and she feels like she's going to fail. So she runs off to escape. Oh, they also go on a honeymoon to Valentine Land or whatever. It's really funny. So she runs off to escape, and so she leaves the door open, and unfortunately the Sandman makes his way into all the other worlds and makes everyone go to sleep, and no one can wake up, and she is panicking. Also, they give her an entire backstory. This was so good. I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. I definitely recommend it because you would never guess the story of Sally, the story that Shay Earnshaw has given her. So, all right, we have 4 more. We have The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This book was really good. This is the second what is it called? Island of Dr. Moreau retelling. The other one I read was Madman's Daughter, and because that's the first one I read, I can't help but keep comparing it to that one. I really like the take Sylvia Moreno Garcia gave to this one. It's a lot more serious. It even has a little bit more realism into it. So first of all, it takes place in Mexico, the coast of Mexico. I don't think it's an island. I just think it's the coast of Mexico. She has infused the story with a lot of Mexican culture, and I thought that was a really cool take on it. The land for her father's, Dr. Moreau's, sciences and everything, he rents the space and he is struggling to fund it. So he wants his daughter to marry the son of the owner of that land so that he could get that leg up on the rent, the forgiveness on the rent, or, you know, he's rich, so he's hoping for that connection with the money. What else can I say about this book? I don't know. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. If I were to compare it to Madman's Daughter, I really enjoyed Madman's Daughter because it was maybe a little bit more action-packed and it was scarier, I think. But this one was probably just maybe better constructed, I would say. Either way, this book was really good. I highly recommend it, and it was really fun. The next book I read was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and I feel so sad about this one. I did really enjoy it. It follows this girl and this guy who are co-workers, and they're kind of rivaling for positions, and our main character is just so frustrated with her co-worker because he manages to always like get a leg up on her, and she's so frustrated. She's trying so hard like to compete with him. And she also has this brother. Her brother's like off in the war. She's been writing letters to him on this typewriter, and she like puts them in a closet because it's just like her way to like talk to him because she doesn't have anyone else to talk to. But the letters, whenever she puts them in the closet, they disappear. And she's like, I don't know where they're going. But then one day someone writes back and she thinks it's her brother, but the person on the other side is like, this isn't your brother. So then they just start talking, and she's got like this really cool magical pen pal, right? She thought they were connected by this like closet, but it's actually the typewriter. And we find out that the typewriter is actually one of 3 that are like connected. Oh my gosh, do you know what I just figured out? Is there a third person that's been getting these letters that we have not heard of yet? Okay, anyways, when you find out who's on the other side of this typewriter, it's great. It is so great. But then we have the love story aspect, and I feel like when that came about, we kind of just like jumped all in. We had this big drama scene where like someone almost died, and then stuff happens, and like I feel like I liked everything up until that point, and then I was just like, okay, what else am I reading this story for? And I wish it wasn't like that. However, like I said, I just found out a question that I want the answer to, so I probably will eventually pick up the second book. Yeah, this one I really loved where it started, and I was so into like them back and forth talking to each other because I was like, oh my god, you know, like when you know, and I was like so into that. But then when we kind of like went on to the next chapter, I was like, no, I want more of that. Like I'm not into this other part of it. But anyways, I'm so not a romantic. I'm sorry. The next book I read was Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. This is part of, there's like a subgenre in horror called bubblegum horror or something like that. Anyways, whatever. This was a really fun book. I really liked this one. So this is about a small town, a girl in a small town. She actually is from Manhattan, but she's come to visit the small town to stay with her sister because her sister is pregnant and apparently her man left her. One night she is attacked by a scary bear in the forest, and unfortunately it wasn't actually a bear, and she starts going through all these changes, and she's going to be turning into a werewolf, but like nobody believes her. Like, how can you go around telling people you're going to be turned into a werewolf? So she does just like keep it to herself, but she's going through all these changes, and then she's also meeting up with like a person from her past, and I don't know. This was just such a fun story. I really, really enjoyed it. And I actually have her other book, Black Sheep, checked out as well. And then another book, and then the last book I read was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This book is one of the picks for my library's book club. This is really cute. I ended up really liking this book. So it follows this older woman who has lost her son, lost her husband, and she's working in an aquarium at night cleaning crew. She's been looking after an older, like, greater octopus. And the octopus actually has alternating chapters where he has his own narrative and he's talking and you're in the octopus's thought process. So as time goes, they become good friends, and this octopus is insanely smart. And then she actually falls and gets injured, and they end up hiring this younger kid for her job so she could take some leave to heal up and stuff like that. This book is one of those stories that like comes full circle, and it like the story is really interesting. It's so coincidental. It's like almost too coincidental that all of these things happen. And also the only other thing that's a little far-fetched and a little out there is like how smart this octopus is. Can an octopus see and detect the differences or similarities in a face? I don't really know. I really don't know if they know that if octopus are capable of this. They do say that has more cells in like one tentacle than we do in our brains or something like that. Overall, this was really fun and enjoyable and heartwarming. And that is finally the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.